Hello and welcome to the CSN3M podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Wade, where every week we get together and we discuss all things health and wellness, specifically as they pertain to mindset, myth busting, and mentoring in the world of nutrition. Today we have another unique podcast. Instead of just hearing me rant and ramble for a 10 to 15 minute spiel, we actually have a special guest today. I'm going to introduce you to Devin, who is our social media intern slash wizard. So welcome, Devin.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ramble myself.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So today, guys, we're going to do a little bit of a chat. I want you to get to know Devin. And the reason I want you to get to know Devin is because you probably know her better than you realize. A lot of you will give me comments during our sessions, and you'll say, "Oh, I loved today's social media post," or "I loved what you put on Instagram." And I'm not the person that puts it on Instagram. So Devin is our social media mastermind, and she also is the one that helps us build and deliver our newsletter. She's responsible for the creation of our Case-Specific Nutrition CSN Inner Circle Facebook group. She is the one that really helps me capture what we're doing, when we're doing it, all the fun things going on in the world of case-specific nutrition, and delivers it to all of our viewers and case-specific teammates so that we all kind of have an idea of what's going on. So I wanted to make sure you got to know her because she's the genius behind a lot of the recipes and a lot of the posts that you've become quite fond of in the more recent months as case-specific nutrition has become much more social media savvy. So thank you for that, Devin.
You do not look at the woman behind the curtain.
I love it. So why don't we get started? I want you guys to learn a little bit about Devin, where she's at in school, what she's doing, her what we call nutrition story. And then we're going to, dig into a little bit of her vision and view, and then some of the, really amazing thoughts that she's starting to try and to develop. Because here at Case Specific, obviously, we're a group of motivated dietitians that are trying to help people physically, mentally, and emotionally, find their version and definition of health. And she's on the team for a reason. She's been so impressive since day one and so helpful since probably day two. And so, Devin, why don't you get started? Just give us a little background. What got you into dietetics in the first place?
So 7 years ago, I had maybe not the best relationship with food. I don't know. It's just like one diet to the next diet, and I was just never really satisfied with what I was finding. So sure enough, I ended up in college thinking I was going to be pre-med. And then I happened to do a pre-med seminar where I got to hear from a dietitian. Her name is Meg Miracosta.
She's awesome. Shout out to Meg. She's changed a lot of dietitians' lives.
She's fantastic. So she kind of just unknowingly convinced me to want to pursue dietetics. And I had seen a dietitian in the past, and I was super inspired by what they did. But sure enough, that was my path. So I finished my undergraduate degree in nutrition at the University of Pittsburgh last year. Shout out, hail to Pitt.
H2P.
I graduated last spring, and in the fall, I started my master's program. So what that is, it's basically a year of didactic work, continuing education, and then the second year is basically your residency, similar to what a doctor would do. But I'll be doing it for a year in the hospital. And then after that, I'll be a real live dietitian.
a real female practicing dietitian. So not a real boy, but a real girl? A real RD? I don't know, however we want to go. That's wonderful. So obviously, as you can hear, she already has the 4-year undergraduate piece, which is a lot of nutrition knowledge, a lot of studying, and then has the master's portion of the coordinated master's done. So this is an individual who has a lot of nutrition knowledge and is still working on the practicing side of it. But you even took your advanced nutrition counseling this semester, right?
I did. It's been an adventure.
So getting started doing some of the motivational interviewing and some of that, taking all that knowledge and condensing it into short sound bites, which I think with how wordy I am, sometimes I need help with, but we all go through it. So, like I said before, Devin has a lot of responsibilities here within Case Specific. She helps us with our newsletters. She manages our social media. She helps keep the inner circle stimulated and aware. And then there's a lot of other things behind the scenes with the other dietitians she does, helping us brainstorm content. She's, you'll probably, if you go to our PittsburghDietitian.com blog, you'll see that she is not a ghostwriter, writer, but a real live writer on there, and gives us some great content. And she's even helped us coordinate and execute a couple group written blogs, which is fantastic. She's a talkative member of our book club. Lots of nutrition knowledge within this individual. So one of the reasons why Devin does so much of our media is that when her and I first sat down a couple of years ago, I guess, she expressed her interest and her vision in being a media-focused dietitian. She wanted to be a dietitian that really did, as I say, scream loud from the rooftops to help get people the information they need. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about, now that you're 5 years into your 6 years of school, you're starting to see that real world RD2B happen. Where do you see yourself landing? How do you see yourself making an impact?
Oh man, if only I knew. So Andrew's right. I am super interested in media. I guess growing up in the social media generation, I'm one of the first that really had social media from early teenage years. And then getting interested in nutrition, I am constantly thinking about how can I bridge those two. And so that's kind of what I've been fortunate enough to do here at Case Specific Nutrition. And from what I know about dietitians, they are all very, very bright, but sometimes it can be difficult to kind of translate that information to the general public. And so that's what I like to do. And, that's what I'm doing here. And so that's kind of where I see myself going. As far as my career, obviously I do want to counsel once I become a full-fledged registered dietitian, but I don't want to stop doing the media stuff that I do. I think that's so valuable. You're able to reach such a wide audience. Obviously there's true value in having like a sit-down one-on-one counseling or coaching session with a dietitian, but to be able to reach so many people with just like these very simple messages that we have, I think is a really great thing. So that's what I'd like to continue to do.
I love that. And, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring her on for everyone to sort of listen to and hear is I felt like this media conversation was a really good topic because as she said, obviously at Case Specific, we do a lot of one-on-one counseling. We do a lot of individual stuff. But there is a lot of media out there, right? I mean, so many of the questions that we get in our consults are mismanaged media or misinformation. There's so much information out there. And so there's two things to be thinking about. Is one, having somebody like Devin who's very eloquent in how she posts media and very careful with what she does with it, obviously sets it up so that there can be more correct information out there, which is obviously very exciting. But then beyond that, it really gives us a chance to try and sort of balance things a little bit, maybe tip the scales and set it up so that we can also help debunk and break down incorrect media. And even a couple weeks ago, I mentioned in a conversation or in another podcast that I did that there's particularly when a wellness person, right, is famous now, what happens is they get interviewed and they get asked a question and the response has to be a short elevator pitch or less. And then beyond that elevator pitch might get parsed down to a sentence. And so the ability to get misrepresented or not tell the whole story or make a claim or a statement that seems much more intense than it needs to be, it's really, really hard to do. I'm an extremely wordy person, as everybody knows, and I use that wordiness as a way to try and tell the whole story. And on Twitter, can't do that, right? You have to effectively deliver a message. And so it really is a craft. But for all of you listening, that's something to keep in mind and remember is that we scroll through media, we read things, and as we're mindlessly using social media, a lot of times we're reading a quick sentence that we are then in our mind subconsciously accepting as fact and then basing our actions on that fact. And that is where a lot of misbehaviors come from. That's where a lot of, opinions come from. There's a lot of, people that randomly cite that one statistic that everybody knows, but it's not actually true kind of scenario. And that's where it comes from. It comes from sound bites. And so one, as a case specific, podcast and PSA, we want to make sure we remind you to keep an eye on where you're getting your information from. And whenever you do read something in the media, particularly if it pertains to nutrition, always ask the question, who is this talking to? Right? Out there right now, there's so many diets. There's diets that are attempting to save the environment. There's diets that are attempting to win the race of how fast can you lose weight. There's diets that are attempting to just feed a human being the way they're meant to be fed. And all of that information can be interesting, but chances are not all of it is relevant to you. And it's so common to see people now, for example, the first thing that pops in the top of my head is cutting the carb and eating a vegetable at a meal makes it healthy. No, it makes it calorically lower, which is where people losing weight tend to do that as a strategy. Whether it's correct or not, we need to sit down with that person and better understand who they are and what they do. But that's an example of it's now commonly, mismanaged and misunderstood that to cut carbs is healthy. And that's not necessarily the case. What is the case is that about 7 out of 10 adults are currently trying to lose weight because our culture does have an attention to that. And so it is common knowledge, but that doesn't mean it's correct. And so Devin is an example of somebody that's what she does now and what she'll continue to get better and better at is she helps people like me take extremely verbose, wordy, long-winded 10-minute statements and turn them into 30 or 50 characters that tell the same story. Concise, right? I'm envious of your abilities.
Yeah, we're in this world of endless access to information, endless access to knowledge, but with that, it's also endless access to misinformation and absolute nonsense. And so what we hope to be on Case-Specific Nutrition is just a voice of reason. We're pretty open-minded people, but we're also trained to be these research detectives, right? And so we not only can respond to a social media post that we see out there, but we are also able to dissect a research article in depth. And my job is to kind of take all that knowledge and be able to translate it for the social media platform, which has to be 140 characters or less.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. I love that. So with that in mind, and without further ado, I want to make sure that I give all of you a chance to hear from Devin in terms of her wisdom as a dietitian. And so, Devin, do you have any sort of, obviously you're in school, you're doing all sorts of really cool studying in the world of behavior with the advanced nutrition counseling and all this other good stuff. Do you have a favorite tip or a topic in the world of nutrition and wellness that you think really sticks with you and would help a lot of people to hear?
Yeah, well, actually, if you let me, I'll give you 2. How's that sound?
Okay, she's over-providing already. Okay, 2 tips coming right up. What do you got?
All right, so one is pretty specific to diet, but it can be extrapolated for the rest of life too, and I call it subtraction by addition. You've probably heard addition by subtraction, but this is subtraction by addition, and what it is instead of focusing on what you can't have in a diet, so you're sitting there after dinner, you crave something sweet, and your husband or your wife and the kids are all sitting around having a piece of chocolate cake with ice cream, and you're just furious at them because you are trying to stay away from sweets. Instead, I would like you to focus on what you can have. So let's say, for me example, I always crave something sweet after dinner. So sometimes I'll make it some roasted apples in the oven, or some Jell-O with whipped cream, and that's just something sweet that I can look forward to after dinner. So instead of focusing on what I can't have, it's what I can have.
I love that.
So yeah.
The amount of times that I've eaten a bowl of cereal after dinner and Allison has brought out a bowl of blueberries and put whipped cream on it makes me think that she might do that too. That's real. As you were saying it, I was like, that's kind of fun. I like that a lot. I think that's really, really good. So that's number one. So the idea of, and I like the psychology behind that, right? If you think about it, the goal of your diet, not a diet, but the way you eat, so your diet, is not to feel rigid, to not feel restricted, to not criticize or ostracize or remove foods, or to say that this is good or this is bad or this is what I can and can't have. It's to eat in a way that's nourishing, feels good, tastes good. And so anything we can do to support a positive perspective in what we're choosing to feed ourselves is obviously an immense win. It gives us a little bit of that life hack feeling.
Absolutely. We have a limited amount of willpower. There's no reason to just sit there and torture yourself over it. Why not have something sweet to look forward to after dinner, even if it's not that
life short, chocolate. Right, that's good. So she promised us 2, so that was one of them. What do we got? What's number 2?
So my second one is for those of you out there who are trying to lose weight, or maybe you're trying to get ahead in business or whatever it might be. I've had this idea rolling around in my head for a little while now, and it's that just because someone else can do something without a lot of effort, maybe they seem like they're naturally gifted. Maybe your significant other can lose weight much faster than you can, or your roommate can get a much better grades in school than you can. That doesn't mean that you can't do the same thing, or you can't do the same thing even better than them without with a significant amount of effort. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that someone else's ease of success has nothing to do with how successful that you can be. It doesn't tell your story. And
that's well said. I like that. I mean, so when you think about that, right, the idea that some people, and what's neat is it's the idea that we all kind of specialize, right? We all have skills. We all bring something to the table. And what's neat, though, is as people, we have the ability to learn, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to that, the statement that fail stands for the first attempt in learning. Some of us, naturally, something that comes really easily. Others, it doesn't come easily, and we have to focus more on it, right? And what's neat is that as people, as learners, as students, as perpetual academics, we have the ability to take something that's a weakness and turn it into a strength if we really choose to do so, if we really want to put that effort in.
Right.
And so I really love that as a reminder for all things. Like you said, that's not just unique to nutrition, but we could see how many times do you see the husband-wife couple, right? Where the husband loses weight really easily and the wife's struggling and not losing as quickly and is frustrated by it. But then we look at it from a big picture and we realize, you know what? She's the one that's making all these delicious fresh meals that are actually supporting both of them and are turning, both of their lives and improving their health in a positive way. And without her help, he probably wouldn't be doing it either. And so we can take something that feels like a weakness and see it as a strength. And then we can at the same time also see where if we do have actual weaknesses, we can work on them. Believe it or not, I'm obviously still a very hyperactive person, but I was always a very anxiety-prone person. And as I get older and older, more and more people think of me as a laid-back individual. And that is the opposite of how I feel internally all the time, right? And I work really hard at that. And that's because my wife is naturally insanely laid back. And I wanted to learn that from her because it has value and benefit. It might make me live longer. Who knows?
Yeah.
So great tips, great points. Any other final ones, or are you just going to give us 2 for now?
That's it for now. You're going to have to tune in for the next one.
Tune in for the next one. Well, we'll have you back and make sure we come up with some fun tips from the emerging trends and all that is new in nutrition. So I'd like to thank you again for coming on, taking the time with me. I appreciate that.
It was a pleasure.
And as always, thank you to everybody listening for your support. This has been another Mindset Monday special episode with our intern, Devin. And please go ahead and share, and don't forget to hashtag spread the health. Remember, you can find us on all our social media at Case Specific Nutrition. Now you kind of have an idea of who you're talking to or whose hands are holding the dressing at Trader Joe's. But please tune in next week for our next Mindset Monday. And until then, keep working on your journey of finding your definition of health.